Welcome to tonight's Women's National League show with FinalWhistle.ie and myself, Alanna Canaan. Thanks for taking the time to join us this evening. I'm sure you won't regret it because we've Sean Crosby on first to recap the last weekend of games. Then we were supposed to be talking to Player of the Month nominated Sarah McKevitt, just in case you saw it in the promos, but don't worry, she'll actually be joining us next week instead. But instead, we'll be chatting to Cork City's captain Becky Cassin after their first win of the season at the weekend, before moving on to Shelbourne's Shauna Fox to discuss whether their winning formula has been figured out, seeing as they scraped a victory against Sligo Rovers 1-0 there on Saturday. And we'll be discussing a lot more with her too. So yeah, then to the roundup at the very end, we'll look at the international break and the Women's National League representation amongst that, as well as the W under 19 victory just earlier this evening. That'll be with Breffney Early. So stay with us anyways, and we'll jump into the recap of Series 5. Now, I'm joined now by FinalWhistle.ie reporter Sean Crosby to take a glance back at all the happenings from the weekend, where we had a postponement, of course, between and DLR Waves due to a rogue sprinkler, I believe, but some real statements of intent otherwhere throughout the league. Sean, we'll start with the P's 4-0 win over Wexford. Surely that'll stand to them come the end of the season.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, they really laid down a marker with that one, being Wexford 4-0. It was just a complete domination, really. The Peas got off to such a quick start. Sive Doyle scoring after 5 minutes, and then Stephanie Roach making it 2-0 before the 20-minute mark. Just a really strong performance, and certainly they'll be wanting to push on this year after such a disappointing end last year. And like I said, lay down such a great marker. Just like looking at some of the standout performers in that game, Anya O'Gorman with a goal and assist, and also heavily involved in Stephanie Roach's goal as well. They really just, like I said, Peas really laid down a marker for the season, and it should make for quite an interesting title race coming down the season.
It wouldn't be like the two of them to link up at all. We were actually chatting with Stephanie Roach about that last week. But yeah, definitely an interesting dynamic duo and a great result for Peas at the weekend. A fascinating one too, in that I suppose they had that points deduction where their first match of the season, the 6-0 win, was actually marked down as a 3-0 win to Sligo Rovers now, given they fielded an ineligible player, is the wording that came out. So that's causing plenty of ructions in the Women's National League table, as well as the goals and assist rankings too. But it's going to cause eruptions at the bottom of the table, or the bottom half of the table too, with Cork City's 2-1 win over Bows at the weekend, thanks to goals from Aoife Cronin and Becky Cassin there, because now that means their rivals there in Sligo Rovers have 6 points and City on 3 after that victory, with Treaty yet to get a win. But you were at that Shell Sligo game, Sean. Sligo didn't scrape through on that one, but what stood out to you on the day?
Yeah, I definitely think Sligo will be very disappointed and not to at least get something from it. I think to anyone watching that game, that was kind of main takeaway. It was such a solid defensive performance from them for 90 minutes. And just on the day, that wasn't enough when usually it would be. Of course, Shell's winning 1-0 right at the end. Kiva Keenan coming off the bench for them. Standout performers has to be Christine Sample between the sticks for Sligo. Just such a solid pair of hands for the whole game, particularly in the first half. 2 quick saves in succession to deny Noelle Murray, and then also denying Jessie Stapleton what would have been like an unbelievable solo goal. She went through about 3 or 4 players, but Sample was able to get down low right at the end just to stop her. Sligo going forward didn't really prove too much. It would have been nice to see them maybe go for a little bit more, because certainly looking at that first half, they really frustrated Shelbourne. It wasn't just so much of they just sat back and kind of rode their luck. Like they kind of hampered their play, and you could see and hear the frustration growing on the pitch. Emma and Fiona Doherty linked up nicely a few times in the first half, game behind, but came to no avail. But as for Shelbourne, well, I think it's a mark of good champions, really. They stuck it out and kept on going. In those last 5-10 minutes, they just threw the kitchen sink at Sligo, really, and in the end it proved to be too much for them. It was the substitutes for me, I think, that changed the game for them. Abby Larkin came on and made an immediate impact. And then, of course, the most important substitute of the game was Kiva Keenan. In the last minutes, Noelle Murray nods the ball down for her and she slots the ball past Sample. Probably the only mistake Christine Sample made all day was maybe some positioning on that one. But other than that, it was a valiant effort from Sligo, and they'll be bitterly disappointed not to come away with at least a point.
And you mentioned Emma Doherty there. She, of course, got a brace for the Irish under-19s tonight, but we'll touch on that again later. It's interesting, Sean, you mentioned there that maybe the result was a mark of good champions. Do you think maybe in another light it could be seen as Sligo set out a blueprint as to how maybe, you know, Shells can be, you can, like, teams can put it up against Shells?
Yeah, maybe I can see that. Yeah, definitely. Like they really were just so compact, and I think disciplined is a good word to use. They really, you could see everyone, because you could hear even near where I was sitting, one of the Sligo coaches, I think was in the stand anyway. It sounded like he was, barking orders at them, and they all are so tuned in, and they all really work for the team. Like we mentioned, Emma Doherty, I think she covered so much ground for a striker. She was everywhere. So yeah, they certainly did kind of maybe lay down a blueprint as to for some of the teams lower down the table how to kind of stand up to them. Certainly at home, stand for Shells, but I think that shouldn't take anything away from the Shelbourne performance, which was, you know, even to win ugly is still a win. Like, just to get it right at the end is a really good sign of character, I think.
Definitely. We'll have to put that one to Shauna Fox, who'll be joining us later in the show. And yeah, it'll certainly be a riveting one now, given, as I mentioned, the way the Peas result, the first game of the season, swung at the weekend. Now that's those 3 points are taken away from them. It makes the Wexford Shells match, that's a game in hand, very, very interesting all of a sudden in the Women's National League. Of course, the other fixture was Galway Treaty, where Galway put 2 beyond Treaty United and Limerick. Even without Savannah McCarthy, they're managing to pull through thus far. Aoife Thompson getting a goal from there and picking up her 3rd goal of the season in that way, really adding to the goal scoring list there. But yeah, we'll have plenty to come as well back after the international break has concluded. But that's all for our weekend wrap of the action. Thanks for your input, Sean. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks very much for having me.
Perfect. Now we'll move on to Becky Cassin, who I caught up with earlier today. Now, Cork picked up their first 3 points of the season at the weekend, beating Bows 2-1 in Turner's Cross. Captain Becky Cassin was on the score sheet on that occasion, and she joins us now. Thanks for coming on, Becky. Nice to get the win at the weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was. I think after the start we had, it was important that we got the win in Turner's Cross in front of a good crowd. Yeah, it was a good feeling.
And you yourself on the score sheet as well, like I mentioned, you know, getting on there on the 80th minute, I think it was, some fantastic play as well from Eva Mangan and Natalie O'Brien for the first goal and the second goal. But that kind of lead up and attacking play, is that something you guys have been working on recently?
Yeah, it is. To be fair, Natalie done well coming in. I can only give credit for my goal to her, to be fair to her. The run, it was CR7 in his prime, I think. It was good. No, we've definitely worked on that in the pre-season, and we've tried to, I suppose, execute it in the first 4 games. And we're happy it came off against Bows.
And yeah, as you say, coming off on that in that match anyways, but a team of the week spot for yourself for your efforts. You were being modest there, saying it was all Natalie. She did a lot of the work, but you did a lot of work on the day too. Maybe a sign that's kind of paying off to get that bit of recognition, would you say?
Yeah, of course, it's nice. I'd always be one to, you know, very team focused. It's obviously nice to, you know, get into team of the weeks and stuff. But when we come away, the cliche, when we come away with 3 points, it is the most important thing. But it is, and it's something I was really proud of the girls at the end of the game. I think it showed how happy we were after the game, and that came down to the hard work that's gone in over the last 4 weeks to get that result. So I enjoyed the goal.
Is it a relief then to get the first, as you say, 3 points on the board? Because when you have been working and just the results haven't gone your way thus far, it's maybe a sign of things changing down for Cork City.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the game against Sligo was a good game. I think we played well in the second half. We created plenty of chances. It just didn't put them away. So to follow that on with the Shells result was obviously disappointing. There's no hiding from that, and it wasn't good enough from us. But to have that reaction and to come out with not only the 3 points but a really good performance against Bows, it shows what's to come, I suppose.
And then, as I mentioned there, captain, as I touched on in the opening few sentences there, but I noticed you were on the podcast with Breffney and Stephanie, I think it was last year, and you were chatting about kind of the culture of football there is down there in Cork City, and it nearly feels like the whole county is behind you at times. Do you think maybe a win like that puts everyone in good spirits again and gets everyone behind you even more so than they maybe were earlier in the season?
Yeah, it does. You want to follow a team that's winning and doing well and playing good football. Like, that's natural. The crowd is unreal. They always give us such a push in Turner's Cross. So hopefully now we can push on and get bigger crowds like we did against Treaty last game of the season. So it's unbelievable. It's the culture of football in Cork is huge. So we just need to keep building that following.
And the men's team are obviously doing exceptionally well at the minute in the first division too. And you see the shed end there, as you say, in Turner's Cross filled up, and hopefully maybe that could transfer over to the women's game. Is that something maybe you'd like to see more of, a kind of culture between the two?
Yeah, definitely. I think we're seeing it slowly. There's more, supporters of the men's side coming into the women's games, and you can hear them in the crowd. And like, just to reference the Treaty game again, we had, some of the lads in the shed that would be there for the men's games, and they were chanting and keeping us going and stuff. It's massive, and Shells had a really good crowd at their game and lads behind the goal and stuff. It makes a difference. So hopefully we can, like I said, we can just build on it week on, week in, week out.
Yeah, people often tend to reference, I think, like you just mentioned, the Shell supporters in particular at the FAI Cup final, the way the flares and the chants and everything like you were talking about there. Maybe that's something we don't see as much of in the women's game. Does it feel like how does it feel when that actually does come off in the Women's National League setting?
It feels unreal. Like, naturally you want to play in front of a crowd and put on a performance for a big crowd and people watching. So the cup final was really cool, and they had the banners, and like I said, we can just hope that we keep getting those crowds in. If that comes from us on the pitch, putting in performances and then doing interviews like this and growing the women's game and making people realize it is something that can be done, and that can, it's entertaining. It is very entertaining. So yeah, just keep building the game.
And giving them something to watch as well, as you said, there was an improved performance there at the weekend, and I'm sure you're looking to continue that on now. But you have a very young side down in Cork at the minute. I think that's fair to say. With such a young side, is it kind of hard to maintain that bit more composure? Because I'm sure their side is full of energy and quality, but maybe there's just that touch of inexperience in the side just yet.
Yeah, we do have a very young team, and we did last year as well. I think it's a case of just learning how to develop consistency throughout the season. We do have a lot of experienced players as well, and even some of the younger girls, like Eva is away playing for Ireland at the moment. She brings a huge amount of experience back with her when she comes back from those camps and playing in those games and stuff. So yeah, it can be difficult, but every team has those challenges. We have the league is getting younger every year, and every team is getting younger. So we face those challenges every week, and we overcome them. We overcame them against Bows. It was to see the reaction from the girls, having lost 7-0 the week before. You could naturally, your head could drop, and you mightn't perform the week after. But all the girls, despite their age or their experience, stepped up and performed.
Would you say then, Becky, that maybe consistency level is something that's a bit frustrating? I know we were chatting to Kristen Sample recently on the podcast, and she didn't have a bad word to say about her time in Cork. She loved it. But maybe there's a lot of players moving around. It kind of is difficult to maintain, as you said, consistency in the squad.
I suppose it's not a bad thing that players move around and get experience within different teams and setups. Obviously, we'd like to hold on to players, as best as we can. And I think losing some of the girls to the States was difficult for us. But that's the reality of the situation. It's at the moment the league is a stepping stone league, I think, for players to go on and play in England or play abroad. But as the years go on, I think the league will become semi-professional. There'll be players getting paid consistently or whatever it might be, and there'll be more of an appeal to stay and play where they are, and eventually the teams will start to get older rather than get younger every year.
And on that kind of professional mindset, I guess, as you said, a lot of teams are like, everyone is on the same level at the minute, and I say they're getting younger, but maybe a lot of teams are striving to a more professional kind of setup, whether that be coaching wise and video analysis wise or this kind of thing. I know Kristen was talking about it, that I think it was Graham Kelly of DLR that mentioned it to Sligo, that this is a thing that all the teams are doing. Do you think there's been a progression in that kind of side of the game in women's football in recent years?
Yeah, definitely. I think from when I first started playing in the league, the professionalism has gone, massively improved. And even for us, we train 3 nights a week. We have an S&C coach that, gives us out programs and looks after our nutrition and stuff. That's, not all the teams had that, at the start of the league, and now most have it. So it's definitely improving, and you're seeing the results of better football on the pitch. The performances from individuals and teams are getting better. So yeah, the only way is up.
Do you be judging the S&C coach then, given your own background?
I try not to. I know we can have good conversations every now and again, but that's his role. I wouldn't get too into it with him.
And with that kind of background day to day, would you say, again, that's another aspect of the game that is becoming more and more, maybe something that people don't realize, that it is, as you say, it's 3 or 4 nights a week, and the training and the nutrition, it all plays into it. Like,
yeah, it's demanding. There's no doubt about that, especially when most of us are working or in college or school, whatever it might be. You just have to find a balance. I think for most of us who've been doing it for a number of years, you manage to find that balance eventually and fit your social life in there to a certain extent sometimes. But yeah, it's definitely getting better.
And you've won plenty in your time as well, Becky, with Wexford Youths as well. You won 4 women's National League titles, 3 FAI Cups, and you played in the Champions League too. I had all the stats lined up there. Captain of Cork City now, as I said before. What would you say has been your career highlight so far?
That's a good question. I think I'll probably have to say playing in the Champions League. I think it's just different, completely different. It's the experience as a whole, the week away and the preparation for it and stuff. So yeah, playing in the Champions League. Yeah.
I think you have a Champions League goal as well to your tally, if I'm not mistaken as well.
Yeah, I might do, yeah.
Any memories of that one?
Yeah, I can remember it really clear actually. And yeah, no, that's probably my highlight overall, to be honest, just that feeling. But yeah, no, that's hearing the anthem and playing against international teams is always exciting.
And then back women's National League side, I guess, you picked up your first 3 points now, and as you say, trying to build on that now for the next few games coming up. Obviously there was big news over the weekend in that the Sligo Peamount result was overturned, and the 6-0 is now ruled as a 3-0 for Sligo Rovers. Do decisions like that, like outside of the actual field of play that you guys have no control of, maybe like affect anything in the squad? Because that's such a swing announcement and of a result too, and maybe against some of your guys' rivals in the table. Does that have a effect at all on Cork City's mindset, let's say?
No, to be completely honest with you, it doesn't. Like obviously when we showed training on Tuesday after it was announced, there was 5 minutes of people being like, oh, did you hear the Peamount result was overturned? But that's it. There's nothing we can do about it or to affect it in any way. It doesn't change how we approach training or matches or anything like that. But yeah, no, it doesn't, to be honest. We're all very, very our heads are screwed on. We know not to let that kind of thing bother us.
And with the head screwed on, as you say, what would be the goal for Cork City, do you think, this year, Becky? We had, I mentioned Eva Mangan with the under-19s there on a few weeks ago, and she was telling us her expectations. But where does your stance lie in it as the captain?
I think to replicate, not to replicate, but to almost hit the same levels as we did in 2020. Our highest finish and get into a cup final. Despite how it finished, with the cup final, it was a really good year for us, and we had international call-ups and stuff like that. So I think something similar, we'd be really, really happy with. Of course, we're going to push and try challenge the top three as much as we can. We have, a lot to prove after the game against Shells, but no better way to start than with a game against Wexford after the international break.
You touched right on the thing I was going to ask you next. The break now with the international break, as I said, but then facing your old club, is that something you look forward to or dread in the Women's National League calendar?
No, I look forward to it. I think most players who go back and play against their old teams look forward to it. You're seeing familiar faces, and it's just exciting overall. Not for one main reason, but just as a whole. So yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. It's obviously going to be a challenge. Wexford are an exceptional team, and they've shown that so far. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait to see it upon the Women's National League return anyways. So thanks for coming on, Becky, and best of luck with it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We touched on how earlier in the show Shelbourne cut it tight against newcomers Sligo Rovers in the most recent series, although they're still sitting pretty there at the top of the Women's National League table on 12 points after they scraped that 1-0 come the end of the game. We'll now be joined by Shauna Fox. That one was a relief, I'm sure, Shauna.
Definitely, yeah. Look, Sligo are a good team. They set out with a really good defensive mindset against us. It was really hard to break them down, and we had a sigh of relief at the end of the game. Late winning goal, so we're delighted.
Yeah, and was there a bit of frustration, or would you say it was, as you say, kind of more happy to get over the line in the end? Because granted, I suppose they weren't scoring either, but you guys were throwing the kitchen sink, I think is what Sean described it as earlier in the show at them, as the clock was ticking away. What was that like to kind of be frustrated, I guess, all through the game and then get a last-minute winner?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not be frustrated when you have like a good bit of possession and you're trying to break them down. But to be fair to Sligo, give them all the credit, like they made it nearly impossible for us. I think, what did it come down to, the 93rd minute for us to break through and get that winning goal? Obviously you're going to be frustrated, but I think Shells are kind of known for last minute winners lately, and towards the second half of last season as well. So I mean, the main thing is we kept going, kept the heads, and luckily enough we got the goal.
And as you say, in a game where Shells maybe were expected to come out on top, do you think maybe there's a bit of pressure there that comes along with the champion status, that maybe you're not so much considered the underdogs the whole pile these days?
I suppose you're always going to have pressure when people think of you as the champions from last year, and they're going to want to beat you, maybe more so than other teams. But I mean, pressure is good at the end of the day, because it's going to make you want to play your best. You're not going to go into any game and think, oh, we have this handy or whatever. It's just going to add to the experience as well and encourage you to play better.
Pressure is for tires, as they say there, Shauna. So you're fresh off the ground, I believe. Talk to me about the likes of Saoirse Noonan coming back from injury and Keeper Keenan back to her best too. Does that kind of thing have an impact on the mood of the entire squad?
Yeah, definitely. It adds so much competition as well, though. You're going up to training with the aim to break into that starting 11. Nothing is set in stone week in, week out. Everyone's fighting for their place, and to have the two girls back with such good qualities to them, it's been great. It only adds to the competitiveness in training and brings on everyone's standards.
And you yourself had the opening season of dreams with Shells last year, signing from Galway mid-season and winning the thing right out of the gate. Can you describe that experience to us?
It was mad. Yeah, I don't know. I've been in the league for years now, and I hadn't won anything. So to join Shells in the summer and then like with the way it did end, be part of that was madness.
Do you think you kind of take a bit of confidence out of that, as you said, like, you know, you've been in the league for quite a while beforehand, and then, you know, you come in and you, out of not a new team, but a new team to yourself, you know, it kind of boosted things for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's hard when you're not winning and you're trying to keep stay motivated for so long. And then when you start seeing rewards and results going your way, it does encourage you and make you feel better. Your confidence grows, and it does add to how you play, I suppose.
Is that what kind of drew you to Shells then in the first place, Shauna? You know, like that you kind of wanted to be in those races and kind of be in the mix, I guess.
Yeah, well, I like, to an extent, for me, it was a personal thing just to try to get out of my comfort zone. All I knew was Galway. Growing up there, I went to college there. I was still living at home, and I just wanted to experience new things, see how I got on my own, I suppose. And then with that came soccer. So I had a choice to make whether I was still going to play or whatever. And I went up to Shells training and I enjoyed it. So that stuck with me.
And now that you're all settled in, do you think the expectations of it have met the reality of what it's actually like in the weekly experience?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't say I'm that long settled in at all. I suppose I'm happy that I got the pre-season under my belt with the girls and got a few matches in there as well, because I still only had played like 5 or 6 matches, maybe 7 before in the season prior. So I thought pre-season was good for me to come to kind of terms with how everything works. And I suppose every club has a different way in how they go about things. And for me, I think probably pre-season where I properly found my feet.
And as we mentioned there earlier, of course, like Saoirse Noonan back, but there's some high-profile moves out of the club too. You know, Jess Sue headed West Ham's way shortly. Is something like that maybe? Does that kind of disrupt the squad, or as you say, you know, it just kind of raises the levels of competition and quality in Shelbourne?
I'm not sure, really, to be honest. We're all delighted for Jess. It's what she deserves. She absolutely loves soccer, like she lives for it. The performances from her week in, week out, like she deserves nothing less. So we're delighted for her. Obviously, we're going to be sad to see her go because she's such a quality player for us. But I suppose that's life. That's soccer. People are going to come. People are going to go. And I suppose we have her till summer. So we'll worry about that after, I'm sure.
Looking at the bright side of it then.
Yeah.
And you're in good form yourself too, getting in the team of the week there, the series before last, and nabbing an opener there against Cork. Nice one for a defender to do that anyways.
Jeez, they're rare anyways. I don't know when's the last time I scored a goal, even come training. Like the girls do have a skit off me sometimes. They're just like what? Are you shoot on it? Like they'd be shots, but they'd be going out at the corner flag. But I don't know. I was lucky to get my head on it, and finally one went in. Hopefully, it's the first of a few.
And how do you react then to the team of the week kind of accolade, Shauna, or do you play into that at all?
Obviously, it's nice to get acknowledged, like, and that recognition in it, and to be surrounded with like 10 other really good players throughout the week. It's really nice. But I mean, I just go out to play good with Shells, play good for the team, do my job, and if that means me getting in team of the week on the Sunday or the Monday, then I'm happy out. That's a bonus.
And when I was doing a bit of research on you there, you're a woman of various talents, I believe. You used to play a lot of Gaelic football and camogie before you switched to the soccer. Is that right?
You must have went back a bit. But yeah, no, camogie was my sport there for a while. I was playing, like, I started that when I was 5 or so. And I stopped then when I was, I'd say 16, 17 properly. Just gave it up because obviously soccer was taken over, and I played a bit of Gaelic in between as well, yeah. but not to the extent of camogie, no.
Yeah, I think the reason it kind of stood out to me was what I read anyways, you can confirm or deny here, was that you only properly took up the football age 12. You know, for a lot of people, I guess that would be considered not late, but kind of that kind of direction.
Yeah, I was going into first year of secondary school, and then I just found a love for it then. But yeah, I suppose you could say it's a late bloomer.
But what made you ultimately choose the football then to pursue properly, I guess?
I'm not sure. I think I just loved the idea of like where you could go with soccer. And at the time, like, it was getting bigger. You'd see more things about women's soccer, whereas camogie at the time was always just you're playing county. That's that. And like, obviously it's a great thing to do as well. But looking towards like the likes of playing with Ireland and stuff, that was probably my aim, and that's what intrigued me the most, and that's what I wanted to do. So I suppose at the time I had to choose between the two. They're both very full on, and I just decided to go with soccer.
Is working towards an Ireland kind of call a big aspiration of yours then, Shauna, at the minute?
I mean, I'd never deny it or never turn it down. But like I said, I just want to play good week in, week out. And if I do get noticed and I do get recognition, then I'd be delighted with that, yeah.
And as you said, you're plucking away there with Shells now, week in, week out. And we mentioned earlier in the show, you know, things at the weekend took an interesting turn when that Peamount Sligo result was overturned, and it kind of switches things up table-wise. What was kind of Shelbourne's reaction to that call? You know, it makes that game against Wexford, the game in hand, all the more interesting anyways.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think everyone was a bit shocked with that. I didn't even know that was like it was on the cards at all, and then the girls were just talking about it, and obviously it's somewhat nice to hear because Peamount would be your rivals to an extent, but I mean, that's up to us now, I suppose. They're after dropping 3 points, we haven't dropped any, so whether we can go out every week now and just not drop points, we'd be laughing. But I mean, it's not an ideal situation for them, but what can you do?
You'll not be too sad for them anyways.
Oh no, there's no sympathy on this end, I don't think.
When did you actually find that out? Because obviously it would have been fairly close to when you were playing your game at the weekend as well.
Half time, actually, in our match. I think Noel was trying to rile us up. And he was like, you know what I just heard?
It set you all off then, did it?
Yeah.
But yeah, as you say, obviously you guys be focused on your own performance, but do you soak in results like that, or ways things go like that? Because, you know, maybe it's the slip up is a chance for you to capitalize on.
Yeah, it's always, I suppose it will always be a thing where you're just like, where now we have the leeway, like we're like, unless we drop points, then we're still going to be on top. Like, unless they slip up, like they've already slipped up, whether it was obviously out of their hands to an extent, but I mean, we can always have that over them, that we're still ahead. Do you get me? So unless we drop our standards or whatever, and we come away with a loss, then we should be all right.
Oh, the drama of it all, you have to love it. But yeah, as we mentioned there, the international break now approaching, and 3 of your Shells teammates involved in the squad, Chloe Masaki, Jessu and Abby Larkin. Are you looking forward to see how it all unfolds for them?
Yeah, definitely. I'm delighted for the girls. Chloe coming back from her injury. Jess just deserves it, as it is with all her performances. And Abby as well, being so young, just getting that spotlight. She deserves it as well. So looking forward to that now over the next few days, seeing what they're doing in camp and stuff, and following it then.
And then when you come back then after the break, Galway for Shells is the one waiting for you. Are you looking forward to that one already, Shauna?
I am. There'll be a bit of nerves there, probably more than there usually is, but I mean, it's only natural to have nerves when you've played with a team for so long, but I am looking forward to it. Yeah, it should be good.
Perfect. Well, I'll be looking forward to it too. Thanks for taking the time to chat to us this evening.
No bother. Thanks for having me.
Now, as I touched on there at the top of the show and just there with Shauna as well, we've the international break now, so no Women's National League action this weekend, but the Ireland Women's National Team plays Sweden next Tuesday at 5:30. That one's to be broadcast live on RTE2. And we've 6 Women's National League players making Vera Pauw's side, those being Eve Bandana from DLR Waves, Chloe Masaki, Jessue and Abby Larkin from Shells, as I just mentioned, Anya O'Gorman from Peamount and Ella Malloy from Wexford Youths. To discuss it all then and the under-19 action, I'll be joined by Breffney Early.
Alan, how are you? I better switch you. You're the presenter. I'll leave you on that side of the screen.
We'll start with the under-19 results. I think Breffney, brilliant 2-0 win for them today against the Czech Republic.
Yeah, fantastic results. And of course, the Women's National League hugely involved in that particular game. I think all 11 of the starting team, all from National League teams, which is huge. And I think that's something that we need to celebrate a bit more, maybe. I lied. 10. One of them plays for Science Swifts in the north, Carrie-Anne Brown. But the other 10 players who started the game today, all based in the Women's National League, all playing in the Women's National League. And that's, I think, probably the biggest result the league has got over the last few years is developing these youngsters coming through. You talked earlier about the age profile with Becky when you were chatting to her about the age profile of the league getting younger and younger. And I think that's because of the work that's been put in at local levels with the local leagues and the emerging talent programs, the Gainer Cup squads in the last decade or 15 years. But now we're seeing those group of girls that would have started in proper programs 8, 10, 12 years ago, now starting to get to that age where they're not a 6-year-old anymore. They're 17, 18, 19. They're knocking on the door of senior teams. They're knocking on Vera Pauw's door as well, saying, hey, remember me? I want to play for Ireland. And they're really, really making waves. Emma Doherty, of course, started the show today in terms of the scoreline, at least 2 goals from her. 2 great goals, a fantastic header in injury time to put a seal on it, 2-0. But her first one, I thought the keeper possibly could have done better. I saw the goal on Twitter earlier, long ball over the top. Emma, as she's done so well this year, she did it in Turner's Cross against Cork a couple of weeks ago for Sligo. She got on the end of it. She outpaced the defender. I thought if the keeper had come out, maybe it would have made it slightly harder for her. But a real cool finish, just rolled it past the keeper who was coming out. And from the edge of the box, it was never really in doubt from there on in Ireland, kind of settled a 2-0 win. That injury time header, of course, bit of a looping header, goalkeeper all at sea again. But I think that was just the effect. But a great performance from the 19s, and there's some really, really good talent coming through in that age group.
Definitely. I think even if you look at the squad list, as you mentioned, or even just the team picture, you can see, they're littered throughout the Women's National League and are big players in the Women's National League as well. I think it's fair to say.
Interestingly enough, for me, the strength and depth is actually more evidenced by who was on the bench for them today. And you look down through the bench, some of these girls didn't play, but you have some of the bigger names in the league that we've talked about on the show, that have been talked about the league. The likes of Murray Devaney, she's been deemed a decent prospect for teams going forward. She's at loan. She came on in the last couple of minutes to make a bit of an appearance. Jenna Slattery didn't make the field today. Ava Mangan didn't play today. Now, maybe they've been rested for the challenges ahead down the line, but it shows the strength and depth that you can leave players of that caliber on the bench, either because they can't make the team or because you're saving them, and still come away with a really fine performance against the Czech side in Czechoslovakia, or in the Czech Republic, should I say. I'm showing my age now. But no, it's a really fine performance, and it's a good squad performance. And Dave Connell's been here before. He knows how this works. It's a tournament. You have to win the group. I might just bring up the table here. I have it here quickly. France, of course, winning today 3-0. So they go top of the group. If you bear with me 1 second, I will bring up the table here. But France go top of the group. And on goal difference, obviously, from ourselves. So we're joint top of the table with France, but that's going to be the big decision later in the week as we see how that goes. We play France, of course, on the 9th of April. That's in 3 days' time on Saturday at 2 p.m. And you'll probably find that stream somewhere. So well worth checking out as well to see where you can get it. But that's probably going to be the make or break fixture. Lose that, we're probably out of running. We have to win the group to go through to the European Championships later in the summer. Not beyond the realms of possibility with this squad, and I think Dave Connell probably knows that. I think it's going to be an absolute cracker of a game on Saturday afternoon.
Definitely, and as I say, it really bodes well for the future there too. And they even had some travelling fans. I saw Becky Watkins' dad had the flag proudly in front of him anyways at the game. But yeah, hopefully they get the people behind them anyways, and as you say, get the result there for that one. But onto the women's national team kind of side of things then. Sweden released a tutorial stitched into their jersey this week about how to beat them. Imagine being that confident. Is the confidence justified, do you think, Rafi?
Well, again, you look at the league table, you look at the group and the standings of how they are. I think this is a free shot. I think Sweden are a class above, and I think anyone within the Ireland setup will admit that. But they're still there to be beaten. You know, there's opportunities there. On the day, anything can happen in these particular games. But I'm not so sure that this is the game that Ireland really need to be focusing on in terms of the qualification race. Our biggest challenge is staying ahead of Finland, staying ahead of Slovakia in that particular race for that second place spot in the playoffs that might bring. It's whatever way. We've never qualified for a major tournament outside of the World University Games, which we get into by automatically almost. We've never qualified for a World Cup. We've never qualified for European Championships. I think we've had opportunities to over the years. We just haven't quite grasped them. This is a really good chance. The results so far have been excellent. The big win against Georgia set the tone for we're a step above the also-rans in this level. I think Vera Pauw is getting a better performance out of this team than others have in the past. That's not to put down what others have done, but I just think Vera's getting them a little bit more clued in. Could she get more? Possibly. But I think where they are at the moment is great. We've had some really good tussles with the likes of Germany and Holland over the years, in recent years, some really good moral victories. Will we get a result next Tuesday? I don't know. It'll be a really, really tough task. But as we saw from Sligo Rovers the weekend, just because a team is deemed to be much, much better than you and expected to beat you by a cricket score, that's not necessarily how it pans out. I think a draw against Sweden would be fantastic. A win would be amazing, but I don't think a defeat is the worst thing at the end of the day. I think we have to keep the score down. We can't get hammered because I think it drains confidence. It'll drain, it'll affect the goal difference, obviously, which could be key when it comes down to it at the end of the season. But if we can go out there and win the other games in this group, I think we'll be in a good enough shout when the mix comes around, and a playoff spot is an outside possibility for this group. I think it's within their capability to get that playoff spot. If they do get that playoff spot down the line, they're going to have to come to a semi-final and a final. I can't see the record being good enough to qualify for the final, but outright. The top three, the way it works is the group winners going to the World Cup qualifier, or the World Cup. The other 9 group runners-up go into a table. The best 3 go into the second round of the playoffs. The other 6 play off to join those 3 for the 3 final spots. So Ireland would probably have to get through 2 games. So there's 6 games from a World Cup. It's within their grasp. I don't necessarily think next Tuesday is going to be the day that they take points, unfortunately.
And to recap as well, obviously they've played Sweden in their qualifiers before. They lost 1-0. That was at home. Then we went away to Finland. We got a 2-1 win. The momentum was going. And then we had that 1-1 against Slovakia. Then obviously the 11-0 against Georgia. But maybe that Slovakia was a bit of a blemish in the run so far, Brittany.
Listen, you're always going to make a mistake here or there. I think if it doesn't happen again, we're in with a shout. But if we drop points to any of these teams, we won't finish in the top 2. It's a huge ask. Remember, in the men's game, top 2 automatically go through and the third is in the playoff. It's harder to get out of a women's group than it is the men. We saw with the under-19s. They have to top their group that includes France. It's a tough ask to get to these championships. It doesn't happen as often as we'd like, and never happened with the ladies. But I think we're looking at a huge momentum within the game over the last couple of seasons, and particularly in the last year and a half. We're seeing a greater interest. We're seeing a better standard. We're seeing more players moving to professional clubs, whether it's on the continent or in the UK or wherever it might be, or in the US, whether it's scholarships into really good third level programs in the NCAA championships over there. And I think we're seeing a better standard of player coming out of the underage setups. You're probably too young to remember, but if you cast your eyes back to when I was involved with teams back in the mid-noughties, you would see girls coming, and they really only started their proper career when they got to the college ages. They moved to Dublin, they moved to some of the programs that were there with clubs. It was only when they came out of underage that they really started to develop as players. Now that process is starting at 14, 15 when they go into emerging talent and younger. And we're seeing the results of that as we go through. the technique of the younger girls coming through is better. Apologies to the girls at the top end of the game and the older ranks, but the technique is better because they've had better quality competition. They've had better quality coaching. They've been used to better facilities. They've probably had more contact time than would have been the case 10 or 15 years ago. And we're seeing those waves of players coming in year on year. And I think the future is really bright. Like, I know we were chatting over the weekend. I watched Treaty United's game at the weekend. I hadn't seen them play really in a long time. And one name caught my attention, Amy Madden in midfield for Treaty United. And I was like, I haven't heard her name before. Did a bit of research. She's in the Ireland under-16 team. And I was like, oh my God, this girl is going to be huge. She's going to be a huge talent. And she's still only 15 or 16. So you're looking at players like that who are coming in, getting into the Treaty team. She's played every game for Treaty this year. I think she's made 4 appearances for the Shannonsiders this year. But she impressed me when I think she lost the ball at one point to Julianne Russell. And she ran about 40 yards, dispossessed her. And I just thought, that's the work rate we need to see from our midfielders. That's the work rate we need to see from our youngsters. And they're getting that at an earlier age now. And I think she's one for the future. She's not in that under-19 squad. Obviously, she's got 3 more years of eligibility at that level. And we might see her at this under-17 squad next year. And I think there's players, and I picked her because she caught my eye at the weekend, but there's plenty of players out there equally talented. We just haven't heard about them yet. And I think it's really exciting. But in terms of next week, it's great to see so many Women's National League players involved. You mentioned the 6 that are currently playing in the league, but I think there's another maybe 6 or 7 who've come from this league very, very recently. Like just because someone like Ciara Grant is down as playing with Rangers, it doesn't mean she wasn't playing in the league six rounds of games ago. So it's not like the men's where they get on a plane and they become fantastic overnight. These girls were built in the league in the Women's National League, and I think you look down through that list, and even the likes of the girls who've been away for a while, the Katie McCabe's, the Lisa Sullivans, Niamh Fahey, Louise Quinn, they all played in this league for a couple of seasons at least back in the day. So they've all had a good ground in here, and I think we see that more maybe in the women's game than we do in the men's.
And those resources, of course, like you mentioned earlier, are only ever improving. But yeah, as you touch on, great Women's National League representation, whether that be current or former. Who do you think maybe of the 6 that are current Women's National League will play a big part in these few games?
I suppose that depends really on the coaching staff and who they pick. Essentially, I don't think it's going to be a day for the attacking players. So the likes of Ellen Malloy, Abby Larkin, who are really young, talented players, I don't see them having too much of an impact in the game unless they come up with a minute of magic to maybe find the back of the net, snatch a 1-0 win, and then they'll be the talk of the town, talk of the country. But I think we're going to see at the back, we're going to see players like I suppose Chloe Mustaki might feature, and whether she makes the starting 11 or not, it's probably marginal in terms of whether she'll play from the start at least. The one player who, to be honest, has impressed me, and I'd love to see getting a crack, she's been in a couple of the last squads, is Eve Badana. I think Eve, for me, has been the best keeper in the league for the last couple of seasons. I know she's not with one of the fancier teams in terms of keeping clean sheets, and Amanda Budden or Niamh Reid Burke or Anisha McAloon have got most of the plaudits in that respect over the last few seasons. But for me, I think the keeper who I've seen do the real basic stuff really well, consistently well, pull off top saves, has been Eve Badana, and I think she's deserving of her place in the squad, and I'd love to see her actually get a few minutes. Will she? Probably not, because they'll go for the experienced players. So I'd expect to see either Courtney Brosnan or Grace Maloney. I think Maloney's the better of the two in that regard, but I think Brosnan will probably get the nod based on, I suppose, how the preferences have been up to now. In terms of the players coming from the league who might make an impact next week, really, we're looking at most of them are in the forward department. There's not too many of them still back in defence, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Anya O'Gorman, to me, she's always been a striker, always will be a striker, but for some reason has been playing right back with Ireland. She'll probably be one of those 6 you mentioned to have the biggest impact. If she has a good game and the rest of the defence with her have a good game, I'd be expecting Ireland maybe to snatch a draw on a really, really good day.
Yeah, it's interesting, the debates all over the pitch. A lot of people argue Katie McCabe should be playing up higher, and yourself with the Anya O'Gorman debate. But also, as you said, the Maloney and Brosnan thing is something that's definitely been, I suppose, around for a while now as to which is the number one. But maybe we'll see now on Tuesday at 5:30. I think that's all from my side anyways, Breffney, are you?
No, it's great. I think it's great to see Ireland in a position where we're even talking about the potential to qualify for a World Cup. I think the work that's been done behind the scenes within the FAI by Vera and her team as well. I know some people like her, some people aren't that fond of her. I think the results speak for themselves. We're in a good position. Can we hold on to it? That remains to be seen. We'll find out next week.
Definitely. Well, as I said, Tuesday at 5:30 on RTE2 for that match. The day before our next show, live on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. So be sure and catch both of those next week. So a big thanks to all of our guests for joining us this evening. Sean Crosby for the weekend review, Shelbourne's Shauna Fox, Cork City's Becky Cassin, as well as yourself, Breffney, for coming on for the Ireland preview and producing, of course. For now, though, I've been Alanna. This has been FinalWhistle.ie's Women's National League show. Good night.